everybody. And my people from Uganda, Wanyabone Basebo Tubaniriza. As always, it is indeed our greatest pleasure to welcome you to our monthly BizSmart webinar series. And one of our major pillars at Springboard Capital is to sustain a customer acquisition, customer management, customer loyalty, and a customer retention system. Welcome to this exciting session. Our topic today is Entrepreneurial Mindshift, creating a mental health shift for entrepreneurs. You will agree with me that entrepreneurs and business owners are determined to focus on the different facets to ensure business sustainability. Efforts towards ensuring strategy, business development, finances, marketing, and operations are a constant focus area for the business. However, the business's success is determined by the mind frame and the mental status of the business leader, upon whom the strategic direction and energy to power on in the midst of challenges and uncertainties lie. What mental health elements need to occupy the business owner's consistent thoughts? And are business people well equipped mentally to lead themselves well enough to lead and grow businesses sustainably? I welcome you to join us for this month's BizSmart webinar and learn how entrepreneurs can navigate business challenges and manage to cope with the ever-growing business stress. And at this juncture, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, Mr. Joseph Ajal, who has over 15 years experience in talent development, 4 years as a professional coach and organizational development consultant. He is the CEO of Precision HR Proprietary Limited. Joseph is an associate certified coach, a HR professional, a certified talent practitioner, a chartered HR business partner, and fellow of the American Academy of Project Management. He is very passionate in the transformational power of people in the bigger picture of the organization. And Joseph has enjoyed practicing the HR trade and coaching in the pension sector, multimedia industry, life insurance, fast-moving consumer goods, telecoms, as well as being an OD and LD practitioner. He holds an MSc in Human Resources Management and Development from the University of Manchester and postgraduate diploma in Human Resource Management and Development from Uganda Management Institute. He as well holds a bachelor's degree in Human Resource Management and Development. On the professional front, he is the president of the International Coaching Federation, Uganda chapter, and the immediate past Secretary General of Human Resource Managers Association of Uganda. What a privilege it is to have you talk to us, Mr. Joseph Ajal. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mina. I am very honored to be hosted by you today. I'm joining you from Kampala. In contrast, I believe the weather in Nairobi is pretty chilly and cold, whilst in Kampala it's been fairly warm and cozy. So that nice, beautiful contrast just tells us we're all part of East Africa. Allow me to share my presentation in a bit, and we'll get started. So ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to entrepreneurs, a lot of us as entrepreneurs, startup founders, owners, it's end of month. It's the 28th, I believe, of the month today. And we have all this pressure as entrepreneurs to, meet our deadlines. Actually, it's 29th. To meet our deadlines, tax filing returns, salary, payroll. If you haven't made payroll from 25th of the month till 30th of the month, you're getting into a stressful state of mind. And you're thinking, where am I going to get all this money to be able to pay my staff their salaries on time? Because they have worked for it, they expect it, they have earned it, and therefore they must be paid on time. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to go through this presentation of mine and just sort of share the impact of the last 2.5 years on all of us, on people and culture. Think about yourself as an individual, as a business owner, as a founder, as a family man, family woman. You've had all these stresses and strains of life coming out of the last 2.5 years. Now, of course, we're on the tail end of the pandemic. We don't have any more very, very serious cases, being that most people have now been vaccinated or have, in fact, ever had COVID in the past. So we have developed some kind of herd immunity, which means we're no longer having that, in the strictest sense, having to deal with the pandemic. But the impact on the economy has not actually gone away. The impact on productivity, the impact on livelihoods, and especially on the mental health of our people has been extremely damaging. So you think about pandemic fever, cabin fever, at the time when we're in the thick of the lockdown. When you think about our mental health and the stresses and strains of life, think about post-traumatic stress disorder, or in this case, post-COVID stress disorder. When you've been through a very stressful and traumatic event or series of events, and as a result, you get depressed. Depression is that feeling of sadness and melancholy, where you have more than 2 weeks continuously of lack of desire to live. You're not interested in life itself. Even if you're highly accomplished and highly achieved, you think it's not enough, to go on. And we've seen a rise in non-communicable diseases that are not spread necessarily by a virus or not spread necessarily by a bacteria. It's actually, we've seen more of this happening in the last couple of months or even years. And unfortunately for a lot of entrepreneurs, because of the stress and the pressure of life itself, sometimes they might find themselves, relying on substances to cope, like alcohol and drugs. There's been a massive impact on jobs and families, where you've had to cut back on the number of employees that you have in your organization. But that means they have had to face a lot of stress on their own side of things as well, back home with their spouses, with their children. The loss of income, the loss of jobs puts more pressure on one spouse, the one who is still having a job or still working. The collective terminations that have happened is a very stressful thing. We're talking about what are the triggers of mental stress that eventually can lead to mental disorders, or mental illnesses, or in this case, depression. Salary cuts. In some instances, staff have been kept on, but their salaries have been reduced, or even getting furloughed, meaning you're put on payroll, but on either half pay or on quarter pay or no pay, even though you've not been terminated per se. So these are all the things that business owners grapple with and stress about, and even employees. Think about tools of trade. Tools of trade are very, very, very important, very critical in our performance of duties. Think about laptops, think about remote access, think about virtual private networks, VPNs, smartphones, tablets, MiFi routers and dongles. All these things which enable us to work effectively remotely have actually added the cost of doing business. Because in the past, you had desktops. Now you need to have laptops, because people should be able to work remotely and should be able to work, from any part of the world. So these tools of trade have become extremely, extremely heavy as a cost for us to bear as business owners and entrepreneurs. Now, what are some of the stressors for you as an entrepreneur? Think about bills. It's end of month. I've just talked about today being 29th. Tomorrow is 30th of July, and therefore the month is ending. And then Monday will be 1st August. So you're thinking about taxes, office rent, bills that are coming in from all manner of suppliers of inputs, suppliers of all kinds of supplies that you need for your production or for your operations, whether it's a service industry or indeed an FMCG. Think about the end of month bills, even at home in your own houses. And all these things cause a lot of stress. So payroll, taxes, inputs, staff complement. Is the staff complement you have enough to deliver services for you at the optimal capacity? Or are you understaffed, in which case people will eventually suffer work burnout and stress and depression? Or are you in fact overstaffed, which means you don't have need for all the people that you have on your staff complement, yet they're drawing a salary from your organization? Decision-making is a very big stressor for us as leaders, as entrepreneurs. Decision-making is very, very critical. There are decisions that must be made now. Should I invest in the stock exchange now, or should I invest next week? By which time the opportunity has passed. Yet you need a week to make the decisions. You need to check in with your valuers, with your auditors, with your board of directors, with your finance and audit and risk committees of the boards. All of these decision-making people will ultimately cost you time, which time you don't have. You have a short amount of time to make a very critical decision. And if that decision goes wrong, the impact of that bad decision on your business might last for a year or two, or even 5 or longer. And so you're worried about making decisions. Am I making the right decisions? Do I have the right number of advisors surrounding me? Are they giving me the right advice? From an accounting point of view, a management accounting point of view, from a tax and taxation point of view, from a valuation point of view, all of these parameters, am I still meeting my obligations to my suppliers, to my stakeholders, to my board, to my staff, and so on and so forth. So ladies and gentlemen, you think about all of these stresses and strains of life that actually make life difficult, difficult to lead, cause a lot of, anguish, and eventually depression. And so I've defined depression. What is depression? Depression is basically a feeling of sadness or melancholy lasting more than 2 weeks. There's sadness, of course. We all go through periods and moments of sadness. But if the sadness lasts more than 2 weeks, now we are depressed. And therefore, you might need additional support. Then you have so many stakeholders. You have many, many, many centers of power. If you work for a government agency, trust you me, you have at least 5 to 10 centers of power that you're reporting to. There's the official reporting line, but there are so many unofficial reporting lines. And then, of course, even in a private enterprise, you have so many stakeholders to manage. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to delve into mental health itself. What is mental health? This is defined by the World Health Organization as not merely the absence of mental illness, but a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their community. This is a classic World Health Organization definition of mental health. So it's not just the absence of mental illness, but in fact, it's that holistic way in which to look at health, and health using your mind, your mental state of well-being. Mental illness is the term that refers collectively to all diagnosable mental disorders. So when you think about mental disorders like bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, you think about schizophrenia, you think about anxiety disorder, panic attacks, you think about phobias. There are people who are claustrophobic, people who have hydrophobia, fear for heights. There are people who are germophobes, they fear germs and microbes, anything that has potential to cause disease, like disease-causing pathogens. There are people who have an extreme fear for those, and so they'll wash their hands several times a day. Not that it's bad. Actually, hand hygiene helps a great deal with health. But in some instances, it borders on obsession. You find a person who's obsessively clean and is all the time either bathing or scrubbing their hands until they even bleed in some instances. That is an obsession which is bordering on a mental illness. So this is what I'm going to talk about in passing today. I will not go so much in detail. I'm not a doctor, neither am I a psychiatrist or in fact a clinical or counseling psychologist. I'm a coach. So I'm approaching this from a point of view of a coach, of a business owner, and somebody who practices positive psychology in the course of my work, and somebody who has practiced HR all my professional life. And therefore, I've helped to build workplace assistance programs in organizations and to embed psychosocial support in organizations such that we as business owners and as entrepreneurs can do the same. So what is resilience? Why should we as business owners and leaders cultivate resilience? Resilience is the ability to cope with and bounce back from stress and adversity, and hopefully even grow through that experience. It is sometimes referred to as thriving and not just surviving, according to the Cornell University Health. So those two blocks, those images that I have on my screen there, fall 7 times, stand up 8. And if you might recall, in the 90s or 80s, there was a movie, there was a series of movies actually acted by the great actor Arnold Schwarzenegger, where his tagline was always, "I will be back." So we will be back, ladies and gentlemen, from whatever struggles and challenges life throws at us. We will be back. It's to have the attitude of saying, my glass is half full and not half empty. To have the attitude of saying, if you toss me lemons, I will make lemonade out of it. as opposed to saying, what can I make out of these lemons? They don't taste sweet. You don't only get sweet things out of life. You don't only get bananas and sweet oranges, like the Valencia oranges. No, you also sometimes get lemons. So your job is to say, this time I've been served lemons. I'll squeeze lemonade out of it and add some sugar or honey and give it a good taste. All right. So now the impact of COVID-19 on mental health. And by the way, let's not fool ourselves that COVID is over. COVID, yes, the genetical part of it might be not so bad right now, but the impact, especially on mental health, has not gone out. In fact, it's getting worse. We're seeing increased cases of self-harm. So it doesn't have to take over your life if you're going through a moment of depression and stress as a business owner or as a family person, a man or a woman. No, it doesn't have to define you as a person. It is just as important that you ask for help as it is when you approach a bank for a loan. Also, in this case, you approach a doctor for support. You approach a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a counseling psychologist, or a clinical psychologist. In this case, a counselor or a therapist to help you deal with the stresses and strains of life that you're going through. Let us normalize dealing with a counselor, just in much the same way as we normalize going to a lawyer for legal services or going to a doctor when you have a fever. In much the same way, if you're feeling stressed out and you want to talk to a counselor or a therapist, let's do that. Let's make it normal. Where can you find the balance? Well, when you're experiencing some mental stresses in life, you can find the balance by doing several activities, including, amongst other things, I call these self-care activities. Sleep. Sleep is probably one of the biggest underrated self-care things you can ever do. Entrepreneurs, we've been lied to for so long. We've been told entrepreneurs don't sleep. That's a lie. We carry on not sleeping, we'll eventually fall sick and eventually kill ourselves or die because of lack of sleep. Sleep is a critical ingredient. Water intake, consuming the right amounts of water and hydration constantly, ensuring that we are constantly well hydrated. With all the changes in weather patterns, we really need to stay healthy and keep ourselves hydrated. What do we feed our minds on? The sort of books that we read, the sort of movies and series that we watch. Those kinds of things have a direct impact on our mental health. And so we want to be careful that we do that. Seeking the support of family and friends. Reach out to family and friends. Don't be an island. Don't isolate yourself. Depression kicks in very fast and very hard when you're isolating yourself. And seek out, fun activities. If you love football or soccer, then play it. If you love basketball like I do, then find time to play basketball. If you love running or jogging like I do, then find time to run and jog. If you love swimming, go and swim. Care for yourself. You can give yourself a treat. You can even go for an ice cream date by yourself. You don't need to have a partner or company. If you love ice cream, go and give yourself a treat. If you love going for spa treatment, go to the spa. Have a full body scrub and have a full body massage, a deep tissue massage, like in the case of sportsmen like ourselves. We get all manner of injuries from time to time. Just the fatigue of keeping up with the bills and the work stresses and strains of life might need you to go and have a full body massage or full body scrub. So self-care, doing the things we love and hanging out with people that we love is a great, great part. Learn simple physical exercise that you can perform at home. You don't need to be a member of a gym, a very expensive gym in a hotel, a 5-star hotel. You don't have to do that. You can actually go to the neighborhood gym near your home, which is affordable, or you can actually work out at home. There are certain, equipment that you can buy, bench pressing equipment, dumbbells that you can buy, things that you use on your jog. You tie them to your ankles and you go running. So in much the same way as you need physical fitness, you also need mental fitness. You need to take care of your mind. Guard your mind as jealously as you guard your physical health. That way you minimize the stresses and strains of life that come to you. But of course, when that happens, then you can seek help. So then how do we cope with economic stress as business leaders, as owners, as founders, as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, as general managers, and so on and so forth? How do we cope? We need to seek colleagues and supervisors support for tools of trade and delegation of authority or sharing of duties. For goodness sake, if you cannot go on leave because you're not sure how your company will run, your company is in deep trouble. If you can't be away from Nairobi or Kampala for 6 months or 3 months, or 1 month, or 2 weeks, or 1 week without worrying about your business collapsing, surely you have a problem. Your business is not there yet. You're simply self-employed. You're not yet an entrepreneur. Okay? So learn to communicate, and for goodness sake, do not self-isolate. As a leader, there's one thing you can never do too much of, that is to communicate. You can never over-communicate. Seek psychosocial support. Seek counseling or therapy if you feel stressed out about something. You might be dealing with grief and bereavement. You might be dealing with financial loss. You might be dealing with loss of a job, loss of income, loss of a contract, a tender that you had that used to give you a very cushy and comfortable living. Now you're dealing with almost 6 months or 1 year of non-assurance of the income that you used to be assured of. Okay, maybe you lost a job. Practice and embrace technology and the different apps. Now, of course, this has to be, you have to do some bit of introspection. How much of this technology is taking my time? And how much of my time am I giving to these different apps? If the time you're giving to the apps is stealing away from your sleep or from time spent with loved ones, then why don't you go for a dinner date with loved ones and leave your phones at home? Try that for a change, unless you need the phone to pay M-Pesa or Airtel money or MTN mobile money at the dinner table. But carry cash if you can, or carry your Visa card. And that way you leave your phones at home. You're able to engage with friends and family in a meaningful conversation without distractions of cell phones, all right, or tablets. Physical distancing, not social distancing. You need to socially stay in touch with your loved ones. It boosts your mental health a great deal. And then avoid stigma, for goodness sake. If one of us is going through therapy and counseling because of some stressful event in their lives or some depression, don't make them the subject of gossip and corridor grapevines. Don't do that. Avoid discrimination on the basis of what people are suffering from. After all, in most instances, nobody chooses to fall sick, unless, of course, they practiced some dangerous habits like using drugs or, abusing alcohol. Then to a certain extent, their lifestyle has contributed to that. But there are people who don't even do any of those things, and yet they find themselves in a state of mental imbalance. So minimize screen time, minimize news feeds, because news feeds can be very, very ugly. Most of the things that make it to the 9 o'clock news is bad news. And minimize our use and playing of video games, because video games are by default addictive. The reason why they sell so much is because they get you hooked. And if you're addicted to video games, the time you should be spending with family and loved ones, you're not doing that. And the time you should be sleeping, getting at least 8 hours of sleep a night or 6 hours of sleep a night, you're not getting that. So social media is a double-edged sword. It's good only if used responsibly, and learn to help others. The feeling of helping others helps yourself as well. Now, on mental health, again, you need to have a routine. Keep a daily routine as far as possible, or make new ones, but stick to it. Go to bed and get up at the same time every day, regardless of whether it's a public holiday or a weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to continue with this. Now, how often do we go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time? You saw that question. How many hours of sleep am I getting at the same time every morning? Do I sleep in a quiet and cool room? Do I keep up with my personal hygiene regimen? Do I eat healthy meals, very, very rich in natural ingredients, and that can remove the toxins and the that act as antioxidants in our body? Do I exercise regularly? Do I allocate time for working and time for resting? In other words, do I have a hard start of my day and a hard stop of my day, or I'm constantly working? Any time of the night you text me, I will be online working. This is very common with entrepreneurs and techies. Very, very common. And it's a big contributor to the mental disorders we are seeing today. Do we make time for the things we enjoy, or do we not? Do we make time for things like backyard gardening if we love doing that, and hobbies? So, ladies and gentlemen, if you protect yourself from these external factors that stress us out, you will probably live a more healthy be in a more healthy state of mental health. So, yeah, this is something that you need to do regularly and consistently. Now, what about parents? In times of stress as parents, please look out for your children. In an age-appropriate language, explain to your children what they need and how much time of yours they need. Maintain familiar routines as much as possible and create new ones if you must stay at home. Discuss all challenges of the virus, the pandemic, and all these challenges that life throws at us with your children in an honest and age-appropriate language. Support them with home learning and make sure that you set aside time for play when they're on holiday or on weekends or in the evenings when they come back from school. Help them to express their fears and sadness. If they're sad or they're scared or they're fearful, allow them to express those things and engage with them in a creative activity, such as playing or drawing. This can definitely help with the process, all right? Let them stay in contact with friends and family members through the phone and online channels, and make sure that they have time away from screens every day for physical activity, like drawing pictures, writing a poem, building something, baking a cake, singing or dancing, playing in the garden if you have a garden, and try and ensure that the kids don't spend so much time on video games. Like I said, video games are very, very addictive. Now, in the hierarchy of mental health needs, entrepreneurs, fellow leaders, listen to this. You need to rest. You need to have hope. You need to have emotions. You need to have humor, have empathy. You need to be able to take care of yourself and many, many, many other things. Self-transcendence, having that self-love and being able to attain success in your career and your business is very helpful for your mental health state of mind. And if you have children with concerns, address those together with them, and they observe your behavior. So you as an adult will set the tone for your children. You'll act as a bouncing board for your children, and ensure that they too are able to attain a certain level of mental health that you need. So at this point in time, I know oftentimes we don't give ourselves enough time for questions and answers and discussions, but I'd like to hand back over to Mina to allow for a Q&A session that we can now use to discuss some of the factors that I've shared on this presentation, and then I'll open up the floor. I'd like it to be as engaging as possible. If you can unmute your microphone and speak and tell us where you're calling in from. Are you in Nairobi? Are you in Kampala? Are you in Dar es Salaam? Whichever city in East Africa you're calling in from, even beyond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agile. That was a deep, deep conversation. And here we would just say banange. And my take home today is mostly self-care. If I do not take care of myself as the leader of my organization or as the head, the thinking tank of this organization, if my mental health is not okay, then even the environment and the people that I lead will not be okay. So for us today as entrepreneurs, as employees, as family people, because we have even talked about our children. So this is a wholesome thing. You are a whole person. So if any area of your life is not okay, then it means all other areas will be affected. And that is my take home today. Very, very excellent presentation. Thank you so much for making us understand that we form the atmosphere of where we are as leaders. And I have one question from Carol, which says, how do we destigmatize mental health challenges? Because people are judged so much and are afraid to seek therapy.
Caroline, excellent question. Stigma is definitely a big, big challenge and a stumbling block to the achievement of better mental health. I like to use the illustration of other illnesses. When we have malaria, does anybody stigmatize against us? I don't think so. When you injure your toe, you go to the doctor, you get a stitch, or you get a plaster of Paris if it's a fracture. Nobody stigmatizes against you because you have a plaster of Paris on your foot or on your leg. No. If you have most of these challenges, if you tell people, oh, by the way, I have hypertension, or maybe I have diabetes, or whatever the case might be, do people necessarily stigmatize against you because you have hypertension? Absolutely not. But you dare tell people that you have a mental disorder, like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. Oh my goodness, you've opened a can of worms. So I want us to start the conversation as leaders today. Some of those difficult employees in your organizations are not difficult because they are difficult. No, they have mental disorders. Have you taken them for evaluation? That boss who is constantly belligerent, argumentative, obnoxious, rude, annoying, irritating, a difficult boss, quote unquote, that boss might not just be difficult. They might be going through a mental disorder. They might actually have an obsessive compulsive disorder for deadlines. So all they do is they stress everybody out about deadlines. But at the end of the day, you give them the work within the deadline. Now what? Do we have deadlines for deadline's sake or for increased productivity? That individual might be suffering from a mental stress disorder, a mental issue. It might be some post-traumatic stress disorder. It might have been exposed to trauma as a child. That lady might have been raped as a child, might have been defiled as a child. And therefore, they have never overcome their phobia for men. So they find themselves very, very aggressive towards men. And you don't know that because you're not their therapist. So we should have the ability as leaders to demystify stigma. We should talk about it. We should talk about these problems. If we have them in families, in fact, in my experience, families practice more stigma against one another than even people outside. You know, they stigmatize against each other so badly that they even fail to seek medical help. Yeah, you see all the signs and symptoms. This person is definitely mentally off, kabisa, but you don't take them to hospital. Because what will people say? What will the neighbors think that my child was admitted? What is the mental health facility in Nairobi called? The biggest mental health facility in Nairobi. What is it called? The biggest mental facility.
Madari Hospital.
Madari?
Hospital.
Yeah, so Madari Hospital. What will people think when they hear that I was in Madari Hospital? A whole CEO being in Madari Hospital? There's nothing wrong. It's a mental facility. In Uganda, we call it Butabika. There's one in Kampala. It's called Butabika National Referral Hospital. It's the main one for mental health in Uganda, and it's free of charge. All the services in there are free. But we also have we also have other private ones where you can actually go and pay. Now, what happens in some families, they would rather take their family members to the one where they are paying, 100,000 Kenya shillings, as opposed to the one which is free. You understand? Yes. Where they're paying 100,000 Kenya shillings per day in a private facility because they want to avoid people seeing them. How do they say that my child or my son or my husband or my wife has a mental, disorder? But the stigma, it starts with us as entrepreneurs in places of work, as HR practitioners. We need to increase the communication around mental health. We need to increase the psychosocial support. When it comes to medical insurance, most insurers do not cover therapy. Why do we wait to cover you when you're sick and need an operation, but we don't cover when you need to go and see a therapist or a counselor? It's not covered in insurance. So as HR people and as leaders, why don't we tell the insurance companies, we will not renew your contract if you don't cover therapy and counseling? Yes. Why should you wait for me to become sick and you want to dispense chemicals in my body? You need me to go to a pharmacy to dispense chemist? No. You treat me when I'm well. Give me a wellness program as opposed to a program that treats me when I'm already sick. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So these are the sort of conversations we need to be having. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I like the challenge you have put across to us as leaders to make sure that we cover therapy, because again, therapy is very, very expensive, and that is mostly what will deter most people to seek it, because considering the amount and what other bills you have to take care of, you will think therapy is not a priority for now. So I think I can only wait. So we will only go to hospital when it is too late. I have another question from Anne. She says, thank you so much for a great presentation. But how does someone deal with insomnia even after embracing all self-care options? And you have said sleep is very important.
Insomnia, in all mental disorders, every single one of them without exception, people who have mental disorders don't sleep well. Either they sleep too little or they sleep too much. Now, when people are depressed, they tend to sleep too much because then they are stressed and worried about life itself. They are sad and melancholic. They can stay in bed for 20 hours. So when you watch, let's say you have teenagers, be very, very, very mindful and watchful when you see the sleeping patterns of your children. If they sleep during the day and hardly ever at night, it might be a sign that something is not going on well in their lives. It doesn't necessarily mean they are sick. No, it doesn't. But it's already a precursor. So when we increasingly load our bodies with toxins, okay, from the environment, from the food we eat, from the stressors in life itself, the air that we breathe, the free radical drinks the Coca-Colas of this world and so that we drink that load up our bodies with chemicals, the genetically modified foods, the tomatoes we eat in our kachumbaris, which were just sprayed the day before with chemicals as they were being harvested, and then we don't wash them thoroughly, we chop them up and enjoy the kachumbari, we're loading up our bodies with chemicals. And those chemicals affect our physical health as much as they affect our mental health. And so in some instances, we don't sleep. So if you're not sleeping enough, try practicing self-care. Like I said, go to bed at the same time every day for 7 straight days, no matter what. Even if you're sleepless, there was a movie we used to watch as kids called Sleepless in Seattle. So even if you're sleepless in Nairobi or in Kampala, go to bed at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. every day without fail. And go to bed in a cool and quiet room. So that's why it helps to take a cold shower just before sleeping. If you have insomnia, try taking a cold shower just before you sleep. It will cool you lower your body temperature down, and then you turn off the lights. Because when you keep the lights on, the receptors in your eyes are still working. They're still sending signals to your brain. So you're not really sleeping soundly because your eyes are working. Even though they're closed, the light receptors are still receiving light into your eyes, and the eyes are working with your brain and keeping you awake, quote unquote, even though you're actually asleep. Then music. Some young people sleep with music on. They say, I can't sleep without music. What you don't realize is you're affecting the quality of your sleep. You'll not be able to shut down properly and sleep soundly because you have music in the background, or you have the TV playing in the living room just next door. So a deep sleep comes from a quiet, peaceful environment, very peaceful and very quiet, and avoid screen time an hour before you sleep. How many times, oftentimes people they put their phones right next to the bed, just 2 seconds before they fall asleep. It's the last thing they do. They're on social media until midnight or 1 or 2. Then they try to sleep and wake up at 5. Those are 3 hours of poor quality sleep. You're loading up your body with toxins. You're increasingly putting yourself at risk of a mental disorder. So if you can't sleep, try and go to bed at 9 or 10 p.m. every night, and make sure 1 hour before you sleep, do not look at anything like a screen, a TV, a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop. Put them away from your bedroom if even possible, because the temptation to wake up and start scrolling is so high. Make sure that you're not looking at your phone, your laptop, your tablet, or TV 1 hour before you sleep, because the images that you last watched will stay playing in your mind for another hour. So whilst you're falling asleep physically, your brain has not shut down. You're still processing the last images you saw on social media. And then avoid graphic images. I tell people, when you're going to post in a WhatsApp group that I belong to, do not post graphic images. There was an accident on the Ngong Road. There was an accident on Kampala Road, for example, and somebody is posting graphic images. Those images will stay up in your mind and affect the quality of your sleep. That's why people get nightmares. And nightmares are a sign of mental disorder. Hallucinations is a sign of mental disorder. Anxiety and panic attacks, somebody wakes up in a cold sweat. It might be a precursor. They might not necessarily be sick, but they're starting to show signs, and therefore they might need help. So excellent question about insomnia, but there are things you can do. Then you can drink chamomile tea just before you sleep. Just plain chamomile tea, no sugar added, because it's already sweetened. Anyway, chamomile is sweet. It's slightly sweet. So drink chamomile tea just before you sleep, and avoid coffee, because coffee has a lot of caffeine. Caffeine will keep your brain awake. But chamomile, on the other hand, has a calming effect on your nerves, on your system, and you can sleep soundly. And then avoid eating a heavy meal just before sleeping. Sometimes unaona mtu anakula ugali na maragwe just 2 hours before sleeping. Heavy meal, almost a full kilogram, a half a kilogram. That's too much food. It will bother you. The body will just be processing the maragwe and ugali, and you can't sleep for 3 hours. Okay? So have light dinners, and if possible, have them early. Have your dinners early as 6 or 7 p.m. or even 8 at the latest, so that you have at least an hour to 2 post your dinner for the body to digest the food. So you're not struggling with digestion and sleep at the same time. That way, you have better quality sleep. All right? We could go on and on, but let me hand over to Mina.
Thank you for this very, very practical insights, and I hope we are all taking notes. There's another question on how do you assist a family member or a friend in a state of depression who refuses to get help?
Who asked the question?
Fiona asked the question, sorry.
Fiona is from which part of the world? Nairobi?
Nairobi, yes.
Okay. Fiona, that's an excellent question. In my experience, every person with a mental disorder that I know about was resistant to help. Every one of them, without exception. The acceptance comes later. So how do you help them? Number one, encourage them to see a therapist. Now, usually they will not go. Even if you book a therapist, they will not go. They will refuse, because by admitting that they are depressed, they're actually saying, I have a mental disorder. But remember what society says? Society says you cannot have a mental disorder. They just tell you, snap out of it. Get away, stop that behavior. What's wrong with you? They have no control of their behavior, even anger management in some instances. So in such a case, you want to encourage this individual to go and seek therapy. Now, if the therapist is far from home, encourage the therapist to come to your house. Let the therapist come. Pay that extra for the transport. That way it's easier for the individual to accept therapy and counseling, as opposed to saying, I've made an appointment for you in Madare Hospital, wherever the hospital, you go there. No, they will not go because of stigma. And by accepting and admitting, it's like they are acknowledging that they have a problem, which in most cases they don't. Have you ever tried to tell an alcoholic that they're an alcoholic? Is it easy? It's not. They will never accept, even if they are reeking of booze like a brewer. They'll reek like they've just walked out of KBL to the office. They will not accept. They'll be like, they will deny, when in fact they are smelling booze. So tell them you need to see a therapist. The first thing. Therapy helps with acceptance. Counseling helps with acceptance. Then after that, you need to take them to a doctor. In this case, a psychiatrist. Not every general doctor can treat. Of course, they can, do first-line support and assessment, but take them to a psychiatrist to get proper treatment of a psychiatric kind, because there are drugs that treat mental disorders. So there are so many. There is first line, there's second line, and there's third line treatment of very strong mental disorders. And if they tell them they have to be on medication for a while, let them be on medication for a while, even if it means the rest of their lives. There's nothing wrong. I know people who have HIV who are on an antiretroviral medication every day. People with hypertension who take their tablets every day. People with diabetes who take their tablets every day, and they live a healthy life. So what's wrong with accepting and acknowledging that you might have a mental disorder and that you can actually go on medication for life? There's nothing wrong with that. But give them the support, for goodness sake. Watch their diet, watch their exercise regimen, provide the emotional and spiritual support that they need at home, and encourage them to seek help. And also physical health, contributes greatly to mental health. So things like personal hygiene, taking care of your environment also helps a great deal. Over to you, Mina.
Thank you very much. Someone says, Mr. Kareli asks, you have said that we should rest. So how much rest is enough? And would we consider engaging in our hobby activities rest?
Yes. Rest is a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of sleep at night. So let's differentiate rest from sleep. Rest is good, just to decompress, to get away from the physical constraints of activities that you do at work, and you just relax. But for sleep, it's minimum 6 to 8 hours. For rest, then you need to factor in things like going on leave, going on vacation, going on holiday. Then hobbies contribute greatly to your physical and mental health. Doing things which you love has been proved true to contribute greatly to a state of well-being. It releases feel-good hormones, okay? Like oxytocin, dopamine, that feel-good hormone, that feel-good factor. Of course, too much of it can be addictive. That's why you should avoid now things like substances, because those can also drive up your dopamine addiction instead. But just a feel-good factor, it releases feel-good hormones on your skin, when you're with loved ones, enjoying good food, enjoying company of good friends, having moderate consumption of maybe wine, if your health allows you to do that. Or I don't prescribe a lifestyle. I really don't. All I'm saying is do the things you love, and in whatever you're doing, do it in moderation. If you go overboard, again, you're bordering on addiction, and addiction will also drive your mental state of health to becoming bad or poor. So I think that's probably the answer to that question.
Thank you so much. Fabish asks, how can one avoid a toxic environment, especially in a work environment?
Remove yourself from it. Resign. I'm sorry. I'm just going to put it like that. Your mental health is not worth risking by staying in a toxic environment. Find another job. Of course, don't resign without a job. Find another job first, or go into enterprise. I'm an entrepreneur. Nobody employs me. I employ people. On the other hand, I employ people, but I'm not employed. I used to be employed for a long time, and the skills I got and the networks I got from employment served me very, very, very well as an entrepreneur. But now I'm an employer. So if you cannot cope, and this toxic environment will eventually kill you, force you to even commit suicide or cause self-harm to yourself, quit that job like yesterday if you can. And if you can totally fail, you've totally failed to find another job, then find alternative sources of making income. You might need to live on less for some time as you find something else to do, but your mental health, I know people have taken a 1 year sabbatical. 1 year sabbatical just to recover mentally. They were stressed and burnt out because you will eventually kill yourself or you'll die at the hands of a toxic boss. Simple. Let's just put it as brutal and honestly as that. So if you can't quit, find another job or find another business, right?
Well, also, everyone else has said that the session has been very insightful. You have unwrapped something that is mostly put under the carpet. So thank you so much, Mr. Ajal. And would you be willing to share your presentation with the entrepreneurs so we can revise and sink in all these good things you have taught us today?
Yes, I will do so, Mine. I will.
Okay, so I would kindly ask our audience to log in, to join in our WhatsApp broadcast. We'll share the link on the chat so that you can be able to get the PPT presentation. And Mr. Ajal, how can we find you? Would you kindly share your contacts and social media handles?
Yes, please. On all social media platforms, I go by the name Joseph Ajal. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. Just look for Joseph Ajal. Facebook, so the same. Twitter, the same. Instagram, the same. And my company is Precision HR Proprietary Limited. So if you follow Precision HR, we can also follow you back on all those social media platforms, including YouTube. We have a YouTube channel as well for Precision HR. But myself, I go by the name Joseph Ajal on all my social media platforms. So if you just search for Joseph Ajal anywhere, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, you'll find me. My phone number is +256. Uganda country code is +256 752 585 772. One of our colleagues can type on the chat +256 752 5857 72. And my email address is joseph@precisionhr.co.ug. joseph@precisionhr.co.ug. I'm based in Kampala, but I travel around the world. So I might be in Nairobi anytime soon. I'm actually coming to Nairobi pretty soon. I'm back and forth between Nairobi and Kampala and other parts of the world, depending on where the business takes me. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And be sure that we shall reach out to you. Audience, the link to our WhatsApp broadcast has been shared on the chat. Kindly click on it and join our WhatsApp broadcast. And of course, we hope that you can be able to also reach out to our speaker today. And at Springboard Capital, we pride ourselves in being the springs that propel you to greater and better heights in life by lending you money at very, very affordable rates. We are the lending hand. And most of all, our professionalism and customer experience is unmatched in the market. You can find us at our 3 branches. In town, we are at Kagen House, first floor, Thika at Sour House, first floor, and our head office is situated at CPS Center on Thika Road, opposite Survey. We are on the 3rd floor. We are also on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, as Springboard Capital. Our website is www.springboardcapital.co.ke. I would like to thank you very much for tuning in. We do not take it for granted that you joined us today. We'll see you next month. To our Uganda people, Wanyabone Wasebo, Mweraba. Bye-bye.
Mweraba. Bye-bye. Kwaherini.
Thank you.
Na asanteni sana na Mungu awabariki.
Barikiwe pia.